is a weight you've been carrying, isn't there? It's that quiet, nagging sensation at 3 in the morning that the world, the one with its bills, its politics, and its endless demands, is somehow off. You've looked at the Bible. You've sat in pews under the gaze of a distant God, yet the answers felt like empty echoes. I've been there too. I remember standing in a cathedral, looking at the stained glass, and feeling like I was staring at a beautiful cage. That feeling is the first sign of a Gnostic awakening. It's the moment the divine spark inside you begins to itch against the fabric of this material reality. For nearly 2,000 years, a specific version of history was sold to us. We were told that Jesus was a shepherd sent to demand our sheep-like obedience. But the Nag Hammadi scrolls, buried in the Egyptian sand to escape the fires of the early church, tell a different story. They speak of a Jesus who didn't come to start a religion, but to act as a cosmic whistleblower. He wasn't here to tell you how to be a better prisoner. He was here to hand you the keys to the cell. He spoke of the monad, the true source, the infinite consciousness that exists far beyond the reach of any earthly institution or lesser creator. The monad is not a god who wants your worship. It is the ocean of pure light from which you were birthed before you were caught in the nets of this lower realm. When we look at ancient imagery, we see the struggle between the flesh and the spirit, but the Gnostics saw something more technical, a frequency mismatch. This world is a heavy, distorted broadcast, and your soul is a signal from the monad trying to find its way home. Today, we aren't just talking about history. We are talking about your liberation. We are going to explore why this knowledge was so dangerous that people were executed just for whispering it. Because once you recognize the spark of the monad within you, the power of the architects of this world vanishes. You are about to remember what you've known all along, but were forced to forget. Before we unlock the first gate of this prison, take a breath. If you are ready to see the world for what it truly is, keep watching. This knowledge isn't for everyone, it's only for those who feel the itch of the divine spark. Archons and the cosmic prison. To understand why your life feels like an uphill battle, you have to look at the architecture of the space you inhabit. The Gnostics were perhaps the world's first system analysts. They looked at the suffering, the cycles of birth and death, and the inherent cruelty of nature, and they came to a radical conclusion. This world was not created by the ultimate source. It was a botched job. They called the architect the Demiurge, a blind, ego-driven entity who mistook himself for the only God. And to manage his flawed creation, he employed wardens. They called them the Archons. Now, don't think of Archons as red-skinned demons with pitchforks. That's the caricature the system uses to make the truth look like a fairy tale. Think of Archons as cosmic bureaucrats, as energetic parasites that thrive on the low-vibration frequencies of fear, shame, and division. Have you ever noticed how, just as you're about to make a major breakthrough in your life, a wave of self-doubt or a sudden crisis pulls you back down? In the Gnostic view, that isn't bad luck. That is the system re-establishing its grip. Does this resonate with you? Have you ever felt that sudden, unexplained wave of doubt just as you are about to break through? Tell me your experience in the comments. We are building a map of these glitches together. The Archons feed on the energy of the divine spark, but because they cannot generate light themselves, they have to harvest it from you by keeping you in a state of emotional turmoil. The early church worked tirelessly to erase this concept. Why? Because if you believe God is the one who created this world exactly as it is, then you must believe that your suffering is His will. It makes you a beggar. It makes you dependent on a priest to negotiate your salvation. But if you realize that the Archons are simply cosmic obstacles standing between you and the monad, you stop begging and start navigating. The material world is a simulation of sorts, a dense, beautiful, but ultimately deceptive layer of reality designed to keep the pneumatic souls, people like you, asleep at the wheel. Think about the systems of control we see today. The constant media cycle of fear, the pressure to consume, the labels that keep us fighting one another. These are the modern faces of the Archons. They operate by convincing you that you are small, that you are just biology, and that your only value is what you can produce or buy. But the Gnostic whispers a different truth. You are a fragment of the infinite source currently wearing a human suit. The God that most people worship is actually the warden of the prison, demanding praise for the very walls that keep you confined. Jesus tried to show us this distinction. In the Gnostic texts, he often mocks the God of this world because he knows that the true Father, the monad, is an entirely different frequency. When you start to see the world through this lens, everything changes. The stress of your job, the anxieties of the future, the weight of your past, they start to lose their density. You realize you are playing a game on a rigged board, and the only way to win is to stop playing by the board's rules. You are a sovereign being of light, temporarily caught in a web of shadows. But a shadow has no power of its own. It only exists where the light is blocked. And today, we are going to move the obstacles and let that light pour through. The divine spark within us. Have you ever looked into a mirror in the middle of a quiet, empty afternoon and felt a sudden, profound disconnect? For a split second, the face looking back at you doesn't feel like you. It feels like a biological spacesuit you are merely operating. You look at your hands, you look at your life, and an overwhelming sense of alienness washes over you. You are not going crazy. That is not dissociation. That is the pneuma, the divine spark, briefly opening its eyes inside the dense machinery of the human avatar. The Gnostics taught that humanity is fundamentally divided not by race, not by class, and not by gender, but by spiritual awareness. They categorized human perception into three states: the hylics, who are entirely consumed by the material world; the psychics, who operate on intellect and blind faith; and the pneumatics. If you are still watching this video, if you feel an unexplainable ache in your chest when you look up at the night sky, you are a pneumatic. You carry the active spark. To be a pneumatic is to live with a chronic, undeniable homesickness for a place you've never consciously seen. You watch others seamlessly integrate into the illusion, obsessing over social status, violently arguing over engineered political theater, finding ultimate fulfillment in material accumulation, and you feel like a stranded traveler in a strange land. It is deeply isolating. It is utterly exhausting. But that exhaustion is sacred. It is the ultimate proof that the Matrix's amnesia protocol failed on you. But how did that spark get here? Why would a piece of the infinite, perfect monad be trapped in a world of taxes, disease, and emotional heartbreak? The Gnostic texts, specifically the secret book of John, tell the tragic and beautiful story of Sophia. Sophia, whose name means wisdom, was an emanation of the true source. But she had a desire to comprehend the infinite without her cosmic partner. Her passion, her intense yearning, created an anomaly, a distortion in the perfect pleroma. From this raw, misguided energy, the Demiurge was born. This blind, ignorant architect then created the physical universe. In his profound arrogance, this lesser creator declared, "I am a jealous God, and there is no other God beside me." The Gnostics understood this wasn't a statement of supreme divine truth. It was the insecure, terrified boasting of a blind warden who didn't even know his own origin. But the Demiurge could not create genuine life. He could only build the mechanical cage. To animate his hollow, clockwork universe, the Demiurge unknowingly breathed the stolen light of his mother, Sophia, into the first human. That light is what beats in your chest right now. I want you to really feel what that means. The deep sorrow you carry, the grief you feel when you see the cruelty of this world, the desperate longing for a home you cannot remember that is not your personal psychological trauma. That is the cosmic grief of Sophia herself, echoing through your nervous system. I remember hitting absolute rock bottom a few years ago. I had lost everything that society told me I needed to be happy. I sat on the floor of an empty apartment, stripped of all my earthly identities. And in that terrifying silence, I didn't find despair. I found an indestructible observer, a quiet, luminous presence that was completely untouched by my human failure. In that moment of total ego death, I realized my severe anxiety wasn't a chemical malfunction of my brain. It was the alarm system of my soul, warning me that I was heavily invested in a decaying simulation. The Archons can take your money, they can break your heart, they can destroy your reputation, but they cannot touch that observer. The divine spark is completely invisible to them. It is a frequency they cannot tune into. When you shift your identity from the human who is suffering to the spark that is simply observing the game, you become deeply dangerous to the Matrix. You stop providing the raw emotional discharge, the fear, the panic, the rage that these parasitic architects rely upon for sustenance. When you observe without reacting, you literally starve your captors. This is how we reclaim our power. If this transmission is hitting a frequency you've been searching for your whole life, consider joining our circle by subscribing. We are documenting the exit strategy from this simulation, one video at a time. This realization is the absolute turning point. For your entire life, the system has trained you to identify with the flesh. It tells you that you are your anxieties, you are your past mistakes, you are your physical body. The entire trillion-dollar medical and pharmaceutical industry is built on treating the symptom of your spiritual imprisonment rather than the cause. They give you a pill to numb the ache of Sophia. But the ache is your compass. The discomfort you feel in this world is the absolute proof that you do not belong to it. The salvation peddled by mainstream institutions is a delayed transaction. Be a good, submissive servant now, and get your reward after you die. But the secret Jesus of the Gnostic Gospels taught that waiting for death is the ultimate trap. If you die without waking up, the system simply wipes your memory and recycles your spark back into the earthly washing machine. True salvation is a present-tense rebellion. It is the fierce, uncompromising declaration that you are not the avatar. You are the eternal light powering it. And the moment that light becomes fully self-aware, the prison doors don't just unlock, they cease to exist entirely. Breaking cycles of deception. Waking up, however, is only the beginning of the war. The moment you realize you are a sovereign being of light trapped in a cosmic farm, the wardens of the farm take notice. The Archons do not let their batteries go without a fight. Have you ever tried to sit in complete silence, simply trying to meditate, and suddenly your mind is flooded with the most horrific, anxiety-inducing, and shameful thoughts imaginable? Where do those thoughts come from? You didn't invite them. You didn't want them. The Gnostics understood something that modern psychology is only just beginning to grasp. Your mind is not entirely your own. The brain is a receiver, a biological antenna, and the Archons are constantly broadcasting on a frequency of fear, guilt, and inadequacy. Think of your mind like a highly sophisticated radio dial. Most of humanity is permanently tuned into the Demiurge's default station, a continuous, deafening broadcast of scarcity, tribal competition, and survival panic. When you begin to awaken, you are essentially trying to change the frequency, and the system actively, aggressively resists. It will manufacture sudden physical exhaustion when you try to study hidden truths. It will orchestrate bizarre synchronicities of bad luck. It will suddenly bring toxic ex-partners or abusive family members back into your life just to trigger your old predictable emotional responses. They use your own empathy, your deepest human vulnerabilities, and your desire for connection as a weapon against you. Let's talk about the biggest, most successful deception of all, the concept of karma and the deeply romanticized Earth is a school narrative. Modern New Age spirituality has been heavily infiltrated and hijacked by archontic concepts. They wrap the iron bars of the cage in velvet and tell you to be grateful for the experience. They tell you that you are here to learn lessons. They tell you that if you suffer, if you face horrific injustice, or if you are born into devastating poverty, it is simply because of unresolved karma from a past life that you cannot even remember. I want you to think about that logically for just 1 second. What kind of school wipes your memory completely clean before every single test? What kind of benevolent educational system punishes you for mistakes you have absolutely no conscious memory of making, and uses profound psychological and physical trauma as its primary teaching tool? That is not a school. That is a maximum security prison utilizing psychological torture under the guise of spiritual evolution. The Gnostics vehemently rejected the idea that we are here to evolve through suffering. The suffering is not the lesson. The suffering is the mechanism of energy extraction. It is the very engine that powers the cosmic farm. To break this insidious cycle of deception, you have to practice absolute, ruthless detachment. I need to be completely clear here. This doesn't mean you become a cold, unfeeling sociopath. It doesn't mean you stop loving your family or stop caring for others. It means you stop emotionally reacting to the manufactured artificial drama of the archontic system. It means you observe the fire, but you refuse to throw your own life force into the flames. When the 24-hour news cycle tries to induce global panic, observe the manipulation, but do not give it the sacred currency of your fear. When a deeply toxic person tries to drag you into a chaotic conflict, recognize that they are unconsciously being used as a biological portal by the Archons to siphon your energetic reserves. You do not fight them. You simply disengage. You step back. You become the untouchable observer. You must practice what the ancient Greeks called anamnesis, the active unforgetting of your divine origin. I learned this the hard, agonizing way. I used to be an incredible people pleaser, bleeding my energy dry out of a deep-seated, irrational guilt that I was never doing enough, never giving enough, never being enough. I thought I was being highly spiritual and virtuous by carrying everyone else's emotional burdens. I thought martyrdom was the fast track to the divine, but I wasn't being spiritual. I was just being a highly efficient, self-sacrificing battery for the Archons. Guilt is the glue that keeps you attached to the Demiurge's karmic wheel. It is the heaviest, lowest frequency you can possibly carry in your energetic field. When Jesus spoke of forgiveness in the hidden, forbidden texts, he wasn't talking about appeasing an angry, bearded God in the sky. He wasn't talking about moral purity or being a good person. He was talking about quantum physics. He was talking about severing the energetic cords of guilt and debt that bind your light to the dense material realm. To escape, you have to forgive yourself completely, radically, and unconditionally. Not because you are flawless, but because the mistakes you made were made in the dark, under the heavy, intoxicating influence of an invasive, parasitic mind. Every time you fell short, every time you acted out of trauma, you were operating infected software in a compromised system. The moment you drop the guilt, the moment you refuse to pay the emotional tax the Archons demand, they instantly lose their grip on your timeline. You reclaim your sovereignty. You become a master of your own frequency, and the wardens have no choice but to starve, step back, and watch you walk out of the prison. Return to the true source. So what happens when the game finally ends? What happens in that infinitesimal fraction of a second when the biological vessel expires, the lungs empty for the last time, and the silver cord tying your consciousness to this dense material plane is permanently severed? This is the ultimate threshold. And it is precisely this transition that the early church, and every major religious institution since, tried to suppress, burn, and erase from human memory. Mainstream religion has conditioned you from birth to look for the white light. They tell you to look for your deceased relatives or benevolent angels, or religious saviors, waiting with open arms to usher you into a peaceful, eternal heaven. But the ancient Gnostic texts, particularly the suppressed Gospel of Mary and the Apocalypse of Paul, issue a terrifying but liberating warning about the soul's ascent. The white light is not a rescue beacon. It is a recycling mechanism. The material universe, as described by the mystics, is surrounded by invisible, concentric planetary spheres, an energetic control grid designed to keep consciousness trapped within the Demiurge's domain. Each of these spheres is guarded by an Archon acting as a cosmic warden, demanding a toll for passage. And their greatest weapon is not physical force. It is deeply sophisticated emotional deception. When you cross over, these entities do not appear as terrifying monsters. They scan your subconscious and use hyper-realistic holographic projections of everything you hold dear. If you are deeply religious, they will project the glorious, blinding image of Jesus or Buddha. If you are grieving, they will project the weeping, loving image of your mother or your child, urging you to step into the warm light. They will wrap you in an artificial feeling of overwhelming love and safety. And then the trap springs. The so-called Council of Elders will review your life, show you your human mistakes, and tell you that you have more karma to clear. They will say you have more lessons to learn, that you failed your mission, and that you must return to a new body to try again. You must not consent. This is the moment of ultimate, uncompromising testing. This is where your anamnesis, your active unforgetting, becomes your invincible shield. You do not need an external savior to carry you across the abyss, because you are already carrying the master key within your spiritual DNA. The secret Essene teachings given by Jesus to his closest, most awakened disciples in the upper room were not prayers of submissive begging. They were passwords of absolute, unshakable cosmic authority. When the Archons block your path and demand to know where you are going, you do not drop to your knees. You do not negotiate. You stand in the full, terrifying recognition of what you actually are. You look directly through the holographic illusion, and you declare with the voice of the true source, I am a child of the pre-existent Father. I am a fragment of the true light. I derive from the uncorrupted source, and to the uncorrupted source I now return. I do not belong to you, and I do not consent to your game. When you speak from the exact frequency of the monad, an incredible phenomenon occurs. The Archons have absolutely no power over you. They cannot touch, consume, or manipulate the true pneuma. Because they are entities of a lower dimension, constructed of dense matter and ignorance, encountering the pure frequency of the true source is lethal to them. They are like shadows trying to hold onto a raging sun. They dissolve upon contact. Your journey, therefore, is not about becoming something new. It is not about earning your way into a VIP afterlife through good deeds or blind obedience to a church. Your journey is exclusively about remembering what you were before the Demiurge built this prison and tricked you into entering it. You are not a tiny, fragile human being trying to achieve a fleeting spiritual experience. You are a vast, infinite, indestructible spiritual universe that was violently forced into a tiny, fragile human experience. The control grid knows that if you realize this, their game is permanently over. That is why the system desperately wants you distracted every single second of the day. It wants you arguing in the hostile comment sections of social media, drowning in political tribalism, obsessing over your credit score, and constantly begging an invisible, tyrannical warden for mercy. It wants your eyes glued to screens so you never look inward. But tonight, that amnesia ends forever. The divine spark inside you has just heard its true, ancient name spoken out loud. You can feel it burning in the center of your chest right now, expanding, pushing against your ribs, can't you? That is not imagination. That is the monad calling you home. Do not let this feeling fade when the screen goes dark. The Archons will immediately try to distract you with a notification, a sudden worry, or a feeling of exhaustion. Resist it. Hold on to this frequency. Nurture it like a sacred flame. If this transmission resonated with the deepest, most hidden part of your soul, if you felt the heavy iron chains of the Demiurge crack even just a millimeter tonight, if this transmission resonated with the deepest part of your soul, if you felt the heavy iron chains of the Demiurge crack even just a millimeter tonight, then you are one of us. The amnesia ends tonight. I want you to anchor this frequency right now. Comment the words, "I remember," down below. Do not just type it. Declare it as an energetic seal of your sovereignty to the Matrix and the infinite universe. Subscribe to stand with our army of awakened pneumatics. We are not just making videos, we are documenting the exit strategy from this simulation. Share this transmission with one soul who is still struggling in the dark. We are going home together. I'll see you in the light.